Today on With the First Pick, Rand, I think we're making podcast history because we are joined by Browns general manager Andrew Berry and Jaguars general manager James Gladstone to peel back the layers on one of the most exciting moments from day one in the NFL draft. I'm Ryan Wilson. That, of course, is former Titans GM Rand Carthon. And Rand, you know both Andrew and James pretty well. So I'll let you kick things off here with your guys, and we'll get this thing started.
All right. And to your point, somebody's going to let us know in the comments whether we made history or not. But we'll go out on a limb and say that we're making history right now, having these two guys. And I appreciate you both. First, I'm going to start with AB. He's a thought provoker. He's a guy that's always been a sounding board, not only for me, but for other people around the league. He's a proud husband, proud father. And from what I've been able to gather, he's a Desperate Housewives and Flavor of Love enthusiast. So want to welcome AB to the show. And then for James, he's very strategic, very thoughtful, another proud husband and father. And congrats on the new addition to you and your family on a new baby boy. And from the moment I met James, when he came in, he was just all in on everything that he does. And there's no that's the reason why he's sitting in the chair he's in now. So I want to welcome James Gladstone to the show. For the viewers out there, you're going to hear me call these guys AB and JG because that's how I know them. And hopefully you guys will get to know them on the same level. But fellas, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us with the First Pick podcast. So we appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate you having us, Rand.
Appreciate the love.
So, Rand, I'll start off real quick because I'm the newbie here as well. And we were talking to James quickly before Andrew joined us. And I'll just start with this. So, James, you didn't have a relationship with Andrew before the trade that happened on April 23rd, trading up from 5 to 2 to get Travis Hunter. So I'll just ask this quickly, and then, Rand, you can take over. I'll get my question here. So how did that conversation begin when you're, number one, you're a young GM, so you may not know as many GMs as an older GM might. And then how did it go from there to get to the point where you guys were able to consummate that draft trade?
Yeah, I think, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong along the way here with the finer details. The farther we get away from it, the foggier it gets. But nonetheless, I think the owner meetings, it served as a good touch point for many of the general managers, especially for those that are first time in the seat. And that was where Andrew and I were able to make an initial touch point, though brief. And from there, once our internal leadership dynamic was beginning to have deeper dialogue about the draft itself, reached out to a few teams there in front of us, and Andrew being one who showed some level of openness to have a larger conversation. And that continued to include more details with a few additional touch points as time went on. But nonetheless, I think it was roughly 2 weeks out from the draft that we really had a strong framework for what ultimately ended up being what we were able to execute once Cleveland was officially on the clock. And, I got to give a lot of credit to Andrew for being as professional and graceful and as clear of a communicator as he was throughout that process. I'd like to think that that's what every trade is going to look like in the future. But at the same time, I think if I do, I'm setting myself up for disappointment. But I can't say at this point with them feeling like it was what was in the best interest of their franchise, us feeling like it was in the best interest of where we were and what we felt like was best for the future. I think it's been an enjoyable process to date, and I think it can be a win-win.
Yeah. May I add something here, Ryan?
Absolutely, please do.
I just say this. It's it's interesting because like James mentioned, we really didn't have a pre-existing relationship really before the spring, and for a deal that big and to kind of keep it under wraps for that long, typically there has to be a really strong trust between the general managers and the organizations, and that's not easy to build in a short period of time. From my perspective, okay, James, the youngest GM in the league, young family, when we talked, just his value system, how he communicated, his intelligence. It was one of those things where how have I not met this guy before? One of those situations. And everybody who knew him spoke glowingly of him. And I really can't commend him and the Jaguars enough for he's right. Not all trades go that smoothly from a communication and operational standpoint, and really just even from a trustworthiness standpoint. So it's really cool. Like, we both joked, hopefully we'll be making a lot of deals over the next few years and doing this for a long time. But this first one was certainly a pleasure.
Gosh, it was easy also along the way, Andrew. I think I joked with you about, keeping it quiet, right? That's not always the easiest thing to do. And I was like, Andrew, I think we're kind of in luck because nobody really actually has my number, right? It's not like I can talk to many people because it's an unknown caller, right?
Well, trust me, that has changed. Now that you're in the chair.
Yeah, that luxury doesn't last much longer, right?
Absolutely. Now, before we start, like, are you two guys aware that you're the youngest two GMs that's ever been hired? Andrew, you're the youngest ever hired at 32 years old. JG, you're 34. Like, are y'all A, even aware of that? And then B, like, what does that mean to have been the two youngest GMs ever hired? AB, you can start.
Am aware of it just because it, like, you always get kind of like the baby face, or that's why I joke. That's why I grew the beard before I became a GM, that type of thing. You always get those.
I wish I could grow.
But I always, particularly when I get asked that question, or used to get asked that question by the media, I'd say, well, don't worry, I've been assured that you all will age me quickly. So, honestly, like it's probably one of those things more to reflect on, when your tenure, your career is complete. But in the moment, like, you're just dealing with so much stuff as Rand, just running the team day to day and trying to do everything you can to make sure that your organization's in the right place, that you really don't have a ton of time to think about it in the moment.
I think that makes a ton of sense and would echo a lot of the same sentiment. And, so much of this, where I find myself in my own sort of life's journey, I think I've always been somebody like being a second born, not having to be the first one to figure things out and learn from a sibling. That was kind of the first chance for me to realize, learning from your own experiences is something that is in and of itself extremely valuable, but that doesn't mean you can't take from other people's experiences and try to get ahead of the curve, so to speak. And Les was somebody who, actually brought me into the space of the NFL. And I think the line of thought that I had transitioning away from teaching and coaching at the high school level was, this is somebody I want to learn from, somebody I want to support, and rooted myself in that line of thought throughout the duration of being with the LA Rams and being with Les. And obviously he opened that up to me, but that exposure, I think, certainly provided me with great depth to this arena. And, I think obviously that's now catered somewhat to getting this opportunity. And had he not opened that door or showed that willingness, I don't think, being at 34 years old, this would have ever showed itself, because, you probably would have had to walk through the path of a traditional area scout all the way up to general manager, which in and of itself just takes a long time generally to see that all come to life.
AB, you hit on it a little bit earlier, and James did as well, talking about, you guys didn't really know each other, before meeting at the owners' meetings. And the way one of the points I gave when I introduced you was a sounding board, right? And so you were one of the first people that ever reached out to me, and we had a relationship already, but you reached out to me when I got the job and gave me sound advice, and were one of the first people I would always call if I had something on my mind. With you going into your 6th year as GM and James going into his rookie year as GM, what advice would you give him to navigate this first season?
A great question. So the first piece of advice I would give, and this was actually given to me by Paul DePodesta, our chief strategy officer. He reflected on his time with the Dodgers, and he'd say, never forget that you're now in a position where every conversation that you have with someone is their most important conversation of the day. And for you, it becomes at a point like, hey, this is like a Wednesday. But the things that make it to your desk, whether it's a crisis, a big roster decision, a contract rollover, like you name it. And for that person, they've probably been thinking about it for several days or like their whole morning if they're meeting with you in the afternoon. Where for you, it may be kind of another item on your agenda for the day. But you can't lose sight of the fact that like you have to be your best self in every one of those interactions, because it's either a high leverage or very important moment for the person on the other side of the desk. The second thing I would say is, I say this to all the new time GMs, like, get sleep. I know it sounds really simple and everything, but get sleep. You will never leave the office and feel like everything's done on your to-do list. It's just the nature of the position. There will always be something to do. There will always be something that takes up your time, but like, it's a very long grind. It takes a lot of mental, emotional, and physical energy. And like, make sure that you're filling up your cup. Obviously, James, you have a young family, and including a newborn. Don't miss those moments. The work will always be there. You're hyper organized. You're smart. You'll know how to balance your time. But get sleep and make sure that you're filling up your own cup. And then probably the last thing is give yourself some grace, because there will be very few people otherwise that do. Like, you're going to make mistakes. Like, none of us are perfect in these jobs. We try and make the best decisions that we can with the information provided to us. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, like, keep swinging, and just realize that like, failure ends up being a very instructive tool for us in our career, because we learn from those mistakes. And if you're not afraid of failing, you'll make the necessary adjustments if something doesn't work out. And just realize you have to give yourself the grace and have the humility to understand that you're not going to be perfect.
Did my bags under my eyes trigger your sleep recommendation?
No, they're a badge of honor at this point in this profession. But
JG, I can tell you, and our history, we go way back from when you first came in, and before AB got on and we were off air, we talked about our 5:30 in the morning film sessions with Breakfast Club, me, you, Ray Agnew, Vito Gonella, Jordan Johnson, John McKay, just pretty much our whole in-house crew, our staff. And so, I've always tried to be a person that would just keep it real with you and just be a sounding board. Now, what I will tell you unequivocally, like, make sure you maintain your relationship with AB, because he's a wealth of knowledge. And I'm older than AB. I got AB by 5 years, but he's someone that I look up to and I respect because of the advice and his willingness to be there to support people. So if you don't get anything else from this conversation, please keep in touch with him and use him as a sounding board.
Oh, that showed itself pretty quickly there in our initial touch points, and willingness to go beyond just the conversation of work, right? Far more rooted into getting to know one another. And, I think those extra steps of a conversation make it far less transactional, and certainly allow for a little bit more connective tissue to grow, and very much appreciated.
And so Ryan hit on this with you guys a little bit earlier, but I want to get a little specific with it. So like we said, on draft night, you guys executed a blockbuster trade. JG, we'll start with you. At what point did you start considering making this potential move up? And then what was that process like for you being a first-time GM and going into it with a first-time head coach, Liam Cohen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so much of it, right? We have a new coaching staff in its entirety. They're getting onboarded essentially just ahead of the NFL Combine kicking off, and I get hired just a couple days before that. And so really the first time that we're all under the same roof is in Indianapolis during the player interviews. I'm getting introduced to a large chunk of our scouting staff for the first time in that setting. And so you have a condensed window where you're starting to work through what's the shape of our current team and how do we align on our thoughts ahead of pro free agency, and really pour a lot of our sort of thoughts into that bucket. And then at the same time, understanding, hey, here's what's going to present itself in the draft, and how do we balance decisions then in free agency with with those upcoming decisions later in the spring, and knowing that stuff is going to be fluid and might change over the course of those conversations. What you initially have may look a little different in dialogue a month later, but being fluid with that. And it wasn't essentially until Liam, myself, Tony Baselli were able to sort of take a pause there during the owners' meetings and come back with a few outside the box thoughts, and one of which was to trigger a potential trade to land Travis Hunter, knowing that he was somebody we thought could give us an impact on both sides of the ball. And I think we're seeing that unfold here throughout the course of the offseason program, really leaning in heavily to the offensive side at this stage, knowing that there's so much more nuance and learning and refinement that's required for him there, and his more natural position being that of corner where he can spotlight. And if you haven't seen it yet, today he was able to make his first play on the ball, first op on the ball, and it was fun to see really the space around him sort of light up as a part of that. And so he's doing in the early going here a lot of what we had hoped that he would for the team, and that's bring it new life, bring it new energy, and stuff that a lot of other people can sort of use as fuel, so to speak. But nonetheless, I think in the lead up to the decision to land on this as our final option, it took a lot of collaboration, a lot of fluid thought, and ultimately a team that was on it with the Cleveland Browns.
And the follow up to that for you, AB, I know you guys spoke briefly at the owners' meetings, but what was your initial thought process when you got that call from James and you saw that he was serious about coming up to 2?
Yeah, so the initial thought process was this gives us. I'm sorry, guys. There you go. This gives us, really the opportunity to walk a number of different paths. Really entering the off season, coming off of a disappointing year and having uncertainty around the quarterback position, as well as a core group of players that were, really approaching the end of their career. We knew we were due for a little bit of a strategic pivot, and that could mean a variety of ways when you're sitting with the number 2 pick. Probably the most direct path is you take a young quarterback, hit on him, and it's the most important position in sports. One of the alternative paths is you take a non-quarterback, in this position, potentially the best player in the draft with Travis, and someone that the league hasn't really seen before in terms of a two-way player. And then the third avenue, which you've seen teams really like Philadelphia and Detroit maybe walk this route, where you're able to take a very good player, but significantly increase the amount of resources that you have to build the team over a multi-year time horizon. And, I remember one of the first conversations we had with James, and he expressed the interest in coming up. I was like, hey, essentially, well, what are you thinking? Is this because, Rand and James, you both know this, that some inquiries are just more calls to check the box, and then others are actually serious inquiries. I remember telling James, I was like, we're in a position where we're probably either going to take a quarterback or we'll take the best player in the draft. So for us to move off of the pick, it's got to be something significant that really helps our organization over the long run. And James was serious because, look, Travis is a really good player. He's a really good player. And I would be shocked if he's not a really good player for a long time in Jacksonville. But for us, where our team's life cycle was, we felt like that was a real meaningful opportunity for us to get another very good player, but, really kind of replenish the resources that we have to build the team over this year next.
Yeah, so off of that, and this question is for both of you, and we'll start with you, James, on the question, but everyone sees the trade and, knows that it goes down on draft night, but they don't understand the communication that happens within the organization to make this happen. So could you talk about your communication processes with your respective owners, your head coach, your staff, the coaching staff? Can you just give us the parameters of how that goes down for our viewers?
Yeah, I think that's a fun question to ask, because I don't think it's going to be the same in every building, but it does take a large dose of dialogue in order to bring something like this to life, and it's a part of the reason why usually they take time to sort of get it done. And I think from our end, right, it started with a general line of thought that spread across our coaching staff and our scouting staff related to the player and the person that Travis Hunter was. Beyond that, right, the leadership group, really myself, Liam, and Tony Baselli, coming to the decision that, look, Travis is somebody that we would like to prioritize, and we would like to see like what it would take to actually to get him, knowing that if we were to stay put at pick number 5, it wouldn't be an option for us. And so through that, having some of the early dialogue with AB and being able to say, all right, here's some of the broad parameters of what this is going to look like. At some point here, we're going to need to bring ownership into the conversation to see if it can truly be something that we can have a full commitment to and buy in for what the vision holds, and make sure that there's a true alignment. And I think that that's very similar in some way, shape, or form to what Andrew has expressed to me about what he was going through. But at the same time, we're in the first year of a regime change. And so what that looks like now versus what it might look like 6 years in could vary. And through that sort of bookends, it might be some version of different as well. But I think we're developing our communication lines here almost in real time and doing after action off of it. But AB, anything you want to highlight as a follow-up just to provide insight?
Yeah, I think as Rand, you alluded to, and James, you mentioned, it is not, these trades aren't a situation where just James and I talk and then, 6 hours later, hey, deal's done, we're going to move forward. There's at times I joke as a general manager, you have to be a little bit the majority whip, for any type of big decision. And so from our perspective, the context that I would kind of give our listeners is, for the whole spring, we're traveling the country to get to know a select group of prospects that we might consider with the number 2 pick. And it goes from a point where you hear about them at the school and you watch them on the film to where you truly start to like get to know them and build a relationship and, meet their support system and everything. And, when you're picking as high as we were, you can kind of envision them, in your program, envision them on the field in your building. And as you work deeper in the process, like you do develop like a natural attachment to, to these people, right? They're people first and players second. And so, when that happens, when, James presented, an opportunity to consummate a deal, it's like, okay, we want to be very thoughtful about this because we've done a lot of work on these individuals. We feel like it's a very short list that can make a major impact for the organization, both on the field and in the locker room. And let's make sure that we're considering all elements of this. So from our perspective, like where we've gone, to James's point, from year 1 to year 6, there's a small cross-functional group that I would call like our senior cabinet, that would have a number of different lenses: research and strategy, scouting, contract management, things like that, where it's not everybody who's necessarily like-minded and looking at essentially the pros and cons of the transaction. Obviously, loop Kevin into it. It's like, hey, this is maybe a little bit of a detour that we thought could be available, but now there's actually a route that we can take if we choose to do so. Here are the pros, here are the cons, and then once there's, I'd say, maybe an initial view or recommendation, looping ownership in to get their perspective as well. Because I think James would say this, like when you're picking as high, or when you're picking the top 5, you're hopefully that player is going to be a cornerstone of face of the organization for hopefully over a decade if the guy stays healthy and plays well. It can be like a true organizational pillar. And so that's something that has to be a collaborative discussion, before you make decision. That's not something that should be or could be done unilaterally.
That was perfect, and you hit on. I hope our viewers will understand now after hearing both you guys speak about it, that it isn't just a quick and simple thing. You hear it and you see it all the time from fans. Why didn't we trade? Why didn't we trade back? Why didn't we trade up? A lot of times you have to have a partner, and everyone in the organization has to be on board with making these things happen. So it's not as easy as pulling a trade on Madden, because I know my son's in there playing Madden now, trying to consummate trades, and he's seeking my approval on it. But anyway, now
Hey,
it's time for
I
us to
do
get-
wonder, Rand, what if we would have waited until week of the draft to try and initiate that? How much more challenging is that than to bring to life? From my vantage point, it's entirely different dynamic. The likelihood of that occurring versus initiating that conversation a month ahead of time made a difference for sure.
And I do commend both of you, because you were able to get this deal done and keep it off the radar. And we talked about it earlier. Like, that is hard to do in this day and age, because no matter who you have, like Andrew said, in your trusted cabinet, no matter if you're in the situation room making these decisions, it's hard to keep information tight. So I commend both of you for being able to get that done, and people only hearing about it the day of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Rand, can I ask James a follow-up?
Yeah, of course.
So I was watching The Hunt, which is the sort of Jacksonville Jaguars behind the scenes lead up to the draft and through the combine. And Andrew, I'll just say this: the Browns aren't quite as open with what goes on behind the scenes, because I was trying to find your side of the story. So I'm glad we have you here to talk about that. But were you guys legitimately worried, James, that the Titans might not take Cam Ward, number one? Because in the draft room for those 15 minutes at 8 p.m. Eastern, it seemed like you were a little nervous, because obviously the Travis Hunter trade does not happen. You can't call Andrew and consummate that deal if the Titans go off perhaps the beaten path that we all thought they were going to take.
Right. No, I don't know that was a true worry as much as it was probably the Hunt doing their part, like any good sort of entertainment piece would, and dramatizing it, right? At the same time, the draft's fun. You can convince yourself of things and it be totally off base, not even close to reality. So yeah, those emotional elements within the draft, I've always enjoyed sort of working through and riding the waves that sort of show themselves at different points in time. But yeah, that one was probably a little more dramatic than it was probably in reality.
And for the sake of having fun, we're going to ask these next couple questions. This is our portion of the show we're calling On the Clock. So it's a rapid fire. And because we got two people, we're getting two answers. We're going to go with the elder statesman, AB, first. And then, James, you answer. So these are fun questions. So you guys know me. You know I like to have fun. So we're going to go with these. What athlete from another sport would you love to sign if rules didn't matter?
Anthony Edwards. I tell him he could play. Actually, I'd put him at receiver. I just put him at receiver. 6'4", 225, strong, can jump out the gym, can run. Give me Anthony. Tenacious. Give me Anthony Edwards.
Oh, that's a good one. I think it's probably so. You were first on the clock. So unfortunately, that's the case in the NFL draft as well. But I do think that's probably a strong choice. I don't know if it would be. Basketball seems like the route you kind of have to go. Even old LeBron James is someone I'm drawn to. But at the same time, I think, maybe you could only get a rep. So it'd probably be, you'd have to have the injury concern or durability concern he's definitely on a maintenance plan, unfortunately. So the strain that it might put on your support system needs to be considered. But yeah, I think one of those two types, if you could go back to Bron and his Anthony Edwards age, right, that would probably be the path to take.
Go to draft day snack.
Oh,
Mine was
I've got
always chocolate covered almonds.
that's the thing. I got like 12 of them, man. Like nacho Dorito, and they're all, none of them are anywhere close to being healthy. Chocolate chip cookies, like they have these little s'more snack. Like it, honestly, like I might gain 8 pounds on draft weekend here because they have such a good spread. But anything that has sugar or chocolate, that's like my go-to.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not thoughtful enough. If it's there, I'm eating it. But it's more of it's almost like a feed bag. It's not, if it's there, it's gone, but it's not being thought about all that much. You might as well blend it up at that point. Give me a straw and we're rolling.
All right, here's another one. If you could pick a song that best describes you, what song would it be and why?
That's a tough one. That is a tough one.
Or just give us the first song that you come to mind. If you got in your car and you're leaving and you're going home, what is the first song that you're going to put on?
It's Music Soul Child. Who knows? That's what it is. But I don't know that like that. I don't know that describe. I don't have a good explanation for that. I love Music Soul Child. Like I love all his songs. So that's probably honestly, it de-stresses me from the day. That's what it does. It de-stresses me from the day. So when I get home, I can be a better version of myself.
What is it Bob Marley? Probably Don't Worry, Be Happy, but that's probably not the title of it.
No, that might be it. Yeah.
Is it?
I think that's it. I think
No, it's not Don't Worry, Be Happy. That was Herbie Hancock.
Okay.
There it is.
Rand's calling us out on our music.
I'm going to tell you, James, because like Ryan said, that the Jaguars have been great with content and giving content. Ryan actually sent me something, and I'm looking at it here on my phone. On your drive in one morning, Ryan was able to see you were listening to the DJ Mustard album, and on the video you was playing the song Perfect 10 by DJ Mustard featuring Nipsey Hussle. So there you go. That's another one to put in
Have you listened to much of that song?
I heard it and I listened to it and I was like, okay, James. Okay, James.
Oh, that's a favorite for sure. So that's where Nipsey gets into a little bit of his poetic form. And he does more talking than, I don't know, rapping, right? But
so Nipsey is my most listened to artist since 2014.
And I know why.
And if I was answering the question, for me, it would be Hustle and Motivate by Nipsey Hussle.
Yes.
So you gotta give that a listen for everybody out there that hadn't heard it.
Now, why are you so drawn to Nipsey? Let's go through that dynamic, Rand, because that's in the blood, so to speak, of the family, right?
Yeah, so Nipsey is from Eritrea. His father, he's from Eritrea. So is my wife. So that's what really brought me to him initially. But like you said, James, like the storytelling, and just his ability, just who he is as a person and what he stood for, the grind, the art of the hustle. And then we have a little bit of a family connection. His significant other, Lauren London, and I were godparents, to a child. We have mutual friends. And so we have, those type of family connections. But, again, before he even blew up and before his untimely demise, again, going back to 2014, he's my most listened to artist according to Apple Music. So there's a reason why.
One of my favorite pieces is, and it's probably, I've been told, John McKay said he said I am a good person in his eyes, but this is a serial killer trait. And it's that I listen to a song on repeat until I learn every word.
Oh, interesting.
And then I don't listen to it for a long duration. But what that does for me, I enjoy trying to figure out the words and stringing them together. But B, during that, let's call it 2.5 week window, 3 week window that it takes me to truly learn a song, when I revisit it years down the road, it takes me back to that window of my life with much greater detail than I ever could without sort of that tune. So that tune sort of resurfaces a lot of those emotions or that sentiment that I had during that span. And it's been really interesting when I think back to because when I got to a point in LA where I was actually living in St. Louis and commuting to Los Angeles with the Rams, I would go back for stretches of 2 to 3 weeks at a time in preparation for the draft. And over that course of time, play a song on repeat. And now I can, in my mind, when I hear it, go back to that 3-week window with a lot of clarity. And it's been an interesting thing to surface in my young adulthood as a tool for memory building.
Well, Ryan, you can add that process to yours, because I know your music taste. You're stuck at a certain genre or a certain time period of music. Mine isn't as stringent as yours, James, but when a new album or project comes out, I listen to it for 2-3 weeks at a time. I listen to it once just to hear it, 2 for the bars and the lyrics, and then 3 for the production.
It doesn't take you as long to come away with what's actually being said.
Nah, like I said, I listen to it in its entirety, and right now, and I don't even know if we're allowed to do this, Striker, but forget it. Shout out to Big X, the plug. His album Take Care is a monster. The production is great. And I even have, now we play the clean version, people, so don't get on me, but this is when my sons get in the car with me, one takes the phone and he's like, we're putting on Big X, the plug, but it's the clean version, so don't get at me.
Crank the volume.
But Rand, producer Debo turned you on to Big X, correct?
Yeah. Shout out to Debo. Debo put me on, because we have our little thing where we're into music, and he put me on, and I've been stuck ever since. My 7-year-old, he just turned 7 on Saturday, had a party, and on his playlist there are at least 4 Big X the Plug songs.
Gosh.
And so I'm trying to look around at families to see if what attention am I catching.
Hey,
So you
Rand,
listen to albums the way they were intended to be listened to, Rand. I mean, that's a lost art for sure.
let me ask this quickly, because I'm older than all you guys combined. And to Rand's point, James, like I'm stuck in Tribe Called Quest, and I am terrible with lyrics. Number one, I don't listen to a lot of things on repeat. So you're obviously incredibly smart. Andrew, you're obviously incredibly smart. I'm actually curious what your music listening habits are, because that might inform my new listening habits, because historically I don't know the words to any songs unless they've been played since 1995 to present.
My genre, like, I'm actually relatively eclectic. Probably a big foundation in like R&B and hip hop, but like my staff's got me into the country. Really, I actually got a bunch of country songs on my Spotify now. Like I'll do pop, I actually do some classical, and then actually the other thing is like some of the different like Broadway musicals, some of the more popular ones, like like Hamilton or even like Six, like that type of thing. I'll get those albums, but it's probably dominated by R&B and hip hop, if I'm being honest.
All right, guys, 2 more. If you had to be a player for one day, what position would you play? And I think I know the answer to this for both of you, but I'm asking anyway.
You want to guess, or do you write it down what you would guess? See if you know us.
Let me see. I'm gonna do this live on the air.
So I'm going to give, I know this is a little bit of a cheap, I'm going to give you 2 answers. One from the adventurous part of my, or one from the adventurous part of my brain and one from the pragmatic part of my brain.
Okay.
So the quarterback would be the one, just because it's like, it's like the hardest position in sports, biggest impact. Then the pragmatic part, it would be kicker, just because like my 38-year-old body cannot tolerate any type of contact and would not hold up. So those would be my 2 responses.
What'd you guess, Rand, for Andrew?
No, I'm gonna let James go first.
Okay.
So I would say I'm going to follow suit. What I would actually be intrigued by exploring, so to speak, is being a kicker for the sake of, you got 3 seconds on the clock. You got to rush out to all the pressure is there. You got to feel that moment, and you got to put your foot on the ball and kick it through. Really, for just that sensation, I would want to explore that feeling. But I'm tapping back into the wide receiver days and looking to get open and catch the ball. That would be an absolute joy. At this stage of life, I got to say, every time I just try and even launch up a stairwell to take a step, which is just a normal human step, I feel like every joint is about to pop. So it does bring some nerve if I'm going to come off the line of scrimmage, but at the same time, it would be an absolute fulfilling day on the
see that?
Oh.
I thought AB was going to go with DB.
Hey, Rand, what's your answer?
For me?
Yeah.
Long snapper.
Oh,
Easy.
you're going with the long career.
I'm going with 18 years of league minimum. And if I'm doing it right, 5 to 6 snaps a game. I'm not greedy. I can play the long game and get 18 years of league minimum and be perfectly fine.
Oh, that is wisdom.
Hey, did you have one more question you want to ask him before we get him out here?
Yes, and this is the final question.
I can't wait for this one.
I'm queuing up producer Striker here. In a winner takes all scenario, who wins in a one-on-one right here?
Oh, the fours. Let's go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. What was your game, James? I had a tough time with the shifty slot wideouts, but I was pretty good with like the outside X's and Z's.
I was slow, savvy is my game for sure. I do think I think just even looking at that right there, you would have given me hell. That would have been a tough outing for me. I can see the demeanor. That was you're ready for whatever's coming. There's no doubt. And there's no way I caught that pass, by the way. that ball was photoshopped closer to the hands than it should have been, all that.
Hey, well, it looks good.
Yeah. My eyes are definitely not on the ball. It's past the eyes.
Well, at least yours isn't in black and white. Like mine is in black and white. Is that right? Like,
That is good.
Rand couldn't even colorize it for you, Andrew. He just stuck it up there in black and white.
No, man. Listen, I can't thank both of you guys enough for just being so open and being, giving us honest and transparent conversation and just joining us here today, on this show. Hopefully this made history. And if it didn't, oh well, it made our history to have two dudes who I respect and have the utmost love and respect for. So again, like you could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, Ryan Wilson, and with the First Pick Podcast, man. We appreciate you boys for coming on.
we appreciate you. This was fun. Thanks for having us on.
Appreciate the love as always, Andrew. Pleasure. Looking forward to more conversations in the future.
Likewise.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's it. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it, and best of luck to both of you. I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to be one of those rare win-win wins. I feel like so. Thank you guys.
We agree on that. Good luck with the newborn, James.
Appreciate it.